Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Coming up over the next hour. European leaders visit Kyiv and pledge military and financial support against Russia, announce enhanced aid and more sanctions against Moscow. Trump meets with French President Macron at the White House as uncertainty about US ties with Europe and Ukraine grow. Germany's CDS and CSU alliance wins the national polls with 28.6% votes. Its leader Friedrich Merz says he intends to form a coalition government with Olaf Scholz's SPD. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils Madhya Pradesh's Global Investor Summit, says textile, tourism and tech will play key roles in India's development. And India-United Kingdom resume FTA talks after 8 months, first round after Labour government assumed office. They aim to double trade in a decade. Well, first up, India is setting the stage for a new era of investment and economic growth. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has unveiled 18 new policies aimed at attracting global investors at the Global Investor Summit 2025 in Madhya Pradesh's Bhopal. With a focus on key sectors like textiles, tourism and technology, the summit is expected to drive India's development ambitions. Meanwhile, Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has emphasized Indian Railways' push for 100% electrification. Here's more on key takeaways from the summit.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled 18 new policies to attract investment, boosting investor confidence during the two-day Global Investors Summit that began in Bhopal on Monday. He called it a historic moment, highlighting the world's strong faith in India's growth. He further mentioned that whether it is the common people, economic experts, global institutions or other nations, everyone has high expectations from India.
कुछ दिन पहले ही वर्ल्ड बैंक ने कहा है भारत आने वाले सालों में ऐसे ही दुनिया की फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी बना रहेगा। ओईसीडी के एक अहम रिप्रेजेंटेटिव का कहना है फ्यूचर ऑफ द वर्ल्ड इज इन इंडिया।
In his address, PM said that textile, tourism and technology will be key drivers of India's developed future.
भारत के विकसित भविष्य में 3 सेक्टर्स की बहुत बड़ी भूमिका रहने वाली है। ये तीनों सेक्टर्स करोड़ों नई जॉब क्रिएट करने वाले हैं। ये सेक्टर्स हैं टेक्सटाइल, टूरिज्म और टेक्नोलॉजी।
India's Minister for Railways, Ashwini Vaishnav, virtually addressed the MP Global Investors Summit 2025. In his address, Minister Vaishnav highlighted Indian Railways' mission to achieve 100% electrification of its network in the financial year 2025-2026.
रेलवे ने अपना इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन करीब 97% से ज़्यादा कर दिया है और 2025-2026 के इस फाइनेंशियल ईयर में 100% इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन हो जाएगा। अब साथ ही साथ रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी के सोर्स से ऊर्जा लेनी, ये एक दूसरा बड़ा लक्ष्य है। तो मैं आज बहुत ही खुशी के साथ आप सबके सामने रखना चाहूंगा कि अब तक रेलवे ने 1500 मेगावाट 1.5 गीगावाट रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी सोर्सेज के साथ टाई अप ऑलरेडी कर दिया है।
The two-day Global Investors Summit 2025 in Bhopal serves as an important platform to establish Madhya Pradesh as a global investment hub. With bureau inputs, Aditya Srivastav's report from Bhopal for DD India.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a grand welcome as he arrived in Assam's Guwahati on Monday to attend the historic Jhumoir Binandari 2025 event at the Suru Sajai Stadium. People warmly welcomed Prime Minister Modi as he made his way to the venue of Jhumoir Binandari. The Jhumoir Binandari 2025 event was organized to mark the 200th anniversary of Assam's tea industry, showcasing the largest ever Jhumur dance performance in history by 8,600 artists from tea garden areas across the state. Prime Minister Modi also held a roadshow in Guwahati ahead of the Jhumoir Binandani event at the Suru Sajai Stadium. The day also saw Prime Minister Modi visiting Bihar earlier, where he released the 19th installment of PM Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana, transferring 22,000 crore Indian rupees to bank accounts of 9.8 crore farmers. Speaking at the event in Bhagalpur, he reaffirmed his government's commitment to farmers' welfare and rural development. Prime Minister Modi emphasized that the NDA government has worked tirelessly to address farmers' challenges, ensuring better infrastructure, income support and connectivity. He highlighted his belief in 4 key pillars of democracy: the poor, farmers, youth and women, as the foundation of India's growth and prosperity.
एनडीए सरकार चाहे केंद्र में हो या फिर यहां नीतीश जी के नेतृत्व में चल रही सरकार हो, किसान कल्याण हमारी प्राथमिकता में है। किसान को खेती के लिए अच्छे बीज चाहिए, पर्याप्त और सस्ती खाद चाहिए, किसानों को सिंचाई की सुविधा चाहिए, पशुओं का बीमारी से बचाव चाहिए और आपदा के समय नुकसान से सुरक्षा चाहिए।
Now on to Europe, where Friedrich Merz is set to take charge as Germany's next chancellor, but with no party securing a clear majority. The real challenge now is to form a stable coalition government. As coalition talks take centre stage, Merz has said that he intends to form a coalition government with centre-left Social Democrats of outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Merz has vowed to restore Germany's influence in Europe while navigating a rapidly shifting global landscape. Here's how the political equation stands at this moment.
Germany's political map has been redrawn, setting the stage for a new era of conservative leadership. Friedrich Merz, CDU-CSU bloc emerged as the clear winner in the final election results, securing 28.5% votes.
As Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, I will once again play an active role in shaping European policy, and with me, Germany will once again have a strong voice in the European Union.
Olaf Scholz' Social Democrats had to chew a bitter pill as it registered its worst performance in history, gaining just 16.4% votes. And for far-right alternative for Germany, AfD, it was nothing less than a dream come true. They secured their best ever result by gaining 20.8% votes.
Wir konnten unser Ergebnis We have doubled our result in 3 years, an incredible success. We are the People's Party, the second strongest force in Germany.
This is bitter election result for the Social Democratic Party. This is also an electoral defeat that I think has to be clearly stated after such a result.
So with no party securing a majority, chance for coalition government again looms large. This could be a daunting task for Friedrich Merz. His best chance is a grand coalition with Scholz' SPD.
Together with the mandates of the Social Democrats, which account for 120 members of parliament, we are naturally capable of forming a government with 328 seats out of 630, a black-red coalition, and that is exactly what we want.
The Greens, who secured 11.6%, could be another possible coalition partner, though CDU's Bavarian sister party, the CSU, has opposed this idea. The pro-business FDP, which triggered the collapse of Scholz's government, barely scraped past the 5% threshold to stay in parliament, leaving its role uncertain. This year's election also marked the end of the controversial overhang seat system, which had previously expanded the Bundestag beyond its official 630 seats. The election comes at a critical moment for Europe, with US President Donald Trump reshaping transatlantic relations and pushing for direct talks with Russia to end the Ukraine conflict. Merz has already called for a stronger European defense policy, warning that US is growing indifferent to Europe's security needs. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, in Germany's federal election on Sunday, the Conservative bloc became the strongest force, but the far-right AfD emerged as number 2. Let's find out what it means for Germany. Thomas Sparrow from our partners DW in Berlin joins us. Well, hello there, Thomas. Germany's next chancellor will likely be Friedrich Merz. What can we expect next?
Friedrich Merz will most likely be Germany's next chancellor. And I say most likely because he obviously first has to look for a coalition partner and form a coalition, a process which could take some time. But if everything goes according to his plans, he will be Germany's next leader, replacing Olaf Scholz from the Social Democrats. Friedrich Merz is 69 years old and he would become Germany's oldest chancellor in decades. And his political career within the CDU-CSU has been actually a very interesting one because he was a member of parliament until 2009, then left politics altogether to enter the business sector and returned in 2021. And that space where he left active politics had to do with the fact that his main rival within the CDU-CSU Conservative bloc was none other than Angela Merkel, who would then become German Chancellor for 16 years. What you can expect from Friedrich Merz is that he will move his party from the center-right more towards the right of the political spectrum. Whereas Angela Merkel had shifted her party to the center, it's expected that Friedrich Merz will shift the party more towards the right, for example, on issues like migration, specifically how to target irregular migration, how to limit the number of irregular migrants that come to Germany. An important question for Friedrich Merz is what kind of concessions he's willing to make when he is looking for those coalition partners in the next few days and in the next few weeks. He has indicated that he would like to have a fast coalition negotiation, but that will also determine to what extent he will be a strong chancellor and to what extent he will be able to pass some of his most important policies once he's in office.
All right. So, Thomas, how easy would it be for Merz to form a coalition?
It won't be easy for Friedrich Merz and his conservative bloc to form a coalition. In the past, coalition building in Germany has actually proven to be a rather difficult activity. There was one time not long ago where coalition building actually took nearly 6 months, and that essentially meant that Germany didn't have a functioning government for that time. Now, Friedrich Merz has indicated that he would like to form a coalition quickly as possible, and he's looking to do that until Easter time. But if it was difficult in the past, it will be even more difficult now given national and international challenges that Germany is facing. Nationally, obviously, an economy that is in a difficult state, the issue of migration, which is becoming much more complicated, the issue of security, which is one that is also important for many voters. And in those issues, Friedrich Merz does not necessarily see eye to eye with some other members of parliament, for example, from the Social Democrats, a party with which he could end up forming a coalition. So it promises to be a difficult challenge for him and for his conservative bloc, and it will be interesting to see whether he manages to achieve his goal to have a coalition in place by the time Easter comes.
And the emergence of the AfD as the second most powerful political force in Germany has its own story to tell. But we leave that for another time. Thank you for joining us for the moment, Thomas Sparrow from Berlin. And still to come on DD India NewsHour. DRC Prime Minister says fighting in Congo has killed 7,000 people since January this year. Japan and the Philippines deepening ties in severe security environment.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked, we just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived at the White House on Monday for talks with US President Donald Trump. Macron became the first European leader to visit Trump since he regained power a month ago. The two leaders were to participate in a G7 call, hold bilateral talks, and then preside over a joint press conference. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is to visit Trump later in the week amid alarm in Europe over Trump's hardening stance towards Ukraine and overtures to Moscow on 3 years of the conflict. So as the Russia-Ukraine conflict enters its fourth year, world leaders gathered in Kyiv for the Support Ukraine event, marking the third anniversary of the conflict. At the event, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for lasting peace, and the EU chief pledged €3.5 billion in aid. Meanwhile, global marches and renewed diplomatic efforts highlight ongoing international support for Ukraine's sovereignty. DD India's Meher Makri has more.
After years of making global headlines due to mounting casualties and mass displacements, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has entered its fourth year. Amid continued hopes for lasting peace, Kiev hosted leaders from across Europe and Canada on Monday for the Support Ukraine event, marking the third anniversary of the conflict, where the fallen soldiers were also honored. Zelensky called for long-term, sustainable peace in the country this year.
Friends, this year should be the year of the beginning of real, lasting peace. We must achieve peace through strength, wisdom, and unity, through our cooperation with you.
The Support Ukraine event saw world leaders expressing their solidarity with Ukraine, all echoing a call for lasting peace, with the biggest announcement being the EU chief's pledge of €3.5 billion in new aid for Ukraine.
Putin is trying harder than ever to win the war on the ground. His goal remains Ukraine's capitulation. It is not only the destiny of Ukraine that is at stake, it is Europe's destiny that is at stake.
I'm proud to announce a new military assistance package for Ukraine worth €1 billion in 2025.
We continue to uphold our strong support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence.
In Brussels, European Union foreign ministers held a moment of silence to mark the third anniversary of the conflict. They also approved a 16th package of sanctions against Russia. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged countries to work together to bring an end to the conflict.
We must spare no effort to bring an end to this conflict and to achieve a just and lasting peace in line with UN Charter, international law and General Assembly resolutions.
From the US to Ireland, Taiwan and Australia, Ukrainians around the world held marches in solidarity with their country.
We want to be heard. We want the politicians to remember that behind their decisions right now, the decisions that where they do not include us as country and as people, that we are still there, that there are people's destinies behind it.
On the other hand, in the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin was presented with a sword and shield by Russia's Grand Mufti, Talgat Tajuddin. The gift was ordered on February 24, 2022, after Russian Muslims expressed full support for what Russia calls its special military operation in Ukraine. As the search for peace continues, all eyes are on how the situation will evolve in Ukraine, with global leaders keeping a close watch on the outcome. Mihir Makri's report for DD India.
Also, after holding a key meeting of EU Foreign Affairs Ministers in Brussels, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said that the EU and the US will work out their differences despite recent concerns.
It's clear that the statements coming from the United States make us all worried. What is the state of play of the transatlantic relationship? It is clear that we have had differences before, but we have always managed to sort them out, and we also expect to do so this time. We hope that the transatlantic alliance works, because it has worked for both ways, and so far we don't have any indication that it wouldn't. Of course, it's going to change, that is very clear.
And Mondays also marked the third anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the day when Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his nation's special military operation to overrun Kyiv. Many expected it to be over in a matter of days, but with Ukraine's dogged fight back and the West's military and financial backing, it is still raging on, upsetting all geopolitical and economic apple carts. The return of Donald Trump to the White House has only cranked up uncertainties. DD India's Jessica Taneja reports.
Three years of conflict, upheaval, and a world watching as Ukraine's future hangs in the balance. The origins of the current conflict can be traced to 2014, following Ukraine's revolution of dignity. Russia's annexation of the Crimean Peninsula and the subsequent rise of pro-Russian separatists in the Donbas region created the conditions for the 2022 escalation. At the heart of the conflict are the competing security interests of both nations. Ukraine seeks to preserve its territorial integrity and strengthen its defenses. Russia, on the other hand, voices concerns about NATO expansion and the protection of Russian-speaking populations. The economic toll has been significant. Russia's GDP has shown signs of recovery, but Ukraine's economy remains fragile. Inflation persists in both countries, with Russia at 9.5% and Ukraine at 12%. Recent diplomatic developments in Saudi Arabia have signaled a potential shift. Talks between United States and Russian officials have introduced new perspectives. In the recent past, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth even suggested that restoring Ukraine's pre-2014 borders and NATO membership are unrealistic.
The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. If these troops are deployed as peacekeepers to Ukraine at any point, they should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission, and they should not be covered under Article 5.
This new approach without Ukrainian representation is a significant departure from previous US policy. European leaders were alarmed at this perceived shift and remain concerned about the future of the Transatlantic partnership, and now have begun to realize the need to step up for their own security. As the conflict enters its fourth year, the path to peace remains uncertain. The world now waits to see if these diplomatic efforts will bring a lasting resolution or if this conflict will continue to reshape the map of Europe. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
And the day also saw Russian President Vladimir Putin calling his Chinese counterpart on Monday. During the call, Xi Jinping commended Moscow's positive effort to defuse the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. The Kremlin issued a statement confirming that Putin had briefed Xi on the recent talks between Russian and US officials held in Saudi Arabia. While Chinese news agencies said that Xi has stated that history and reality demonstrate that the two countries are good neighbors who cannot be separated. True friends who share both prosperity and adversity, supporting each other and pursuing common development. Now, Israel has sent tanks into the occupied West Bank for the first time in more than 20 years on Sunday, as it ordered the military to prepare for an extended stay to fight Palestinian militant groups in the area's refugee camps. Earlier, Israel indefinitely delayed the release of more than 600 Palestinian prisoners in what is seen as another setback to the ceasefire process. DD India's Dheeraj Das gets us more.
The fragile Gaza ceasefire deal faced new hurdles after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel is prepared to resume fighting in the Gaza Strip at any moment.
We are prepared to resume intense fighting at any moment. Our operation plans are ready. Let me state our core policies. In Gaza, we have eliminated most of the Hamas organized forces, but let there be no doubt. We will complete the war's objective entirely, including this one.
While Hamas said it will not engage in further ceasefire talks until Israel frees the 620 Palestinians who were supposed to be released on Saturday under the deal that took effect on January. Israel sent tanks into the West Bank for the first time in more than 20 years on Sunday. Israel also ordered the military to prepare for an extended stay to fight Palestinian militant groups in the area's refugee camps. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar met senior European officials in Brussels on Monday, said Israel is defending its security in the West Bank.
What we are doing in what you call West Bank and we call Judea and Samaria is defending our security. It's military operations taking place there against terrorists, and no other objectives but this one. So we must make sure that Gaza Strip will disarm totally the terrorist organization like Hamas and the Islamic Jihad will step down.
Israel's move triggered reactions from Palestinian Foreign Ministry, which termed Israeli moves a dangerous escalation. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres' concern over situation in West Bank.
We are witnessing a precarious ceasefire. We must avoid at all costs a resumption of hostilities. The people in Gaza have already suffered too much. It's time for a permanent ceasefire, the dignified release of all remaining hostages, irreversible progress towards a two-state solution, an end to the occupation, and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with Gaza as an integral part.
In Petah Tikva in Israel, families of released Israeli hostages vow to fight for those still in captivity. Israel said earlier it was delaying the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners it had planned to free the day before until Hamas met its conditions, underscoring the fragility of Gaza ceasefire accord. Dheeraj Das for DD India.
Now, DRC Prime Minister Judith Suminwa Tuluka has said that some 7,000 people have died since January in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. While attending a high-level meeting of the Human Rights Council in Geneva on Monday, Prime Minister Tuluka said that approximately 450,000 people are without shelter after 90 displacement camps were destroyed during this conflict between DRC and Rwanda-backed troops. Japan and the Philippines have agreed to further deepen defense ties in the face of an increasingly severe security environment in the Indo-Pacific region. Japanese Defense Minister General Nakatani said on Monday. Nakatani met his Filipino counterpart, Gilberto Teodoro, in Manila for a meeting in which the two ministers tackled regional security issues. During the meeting, both the countries agreed to deepen cooperation on military exchanges. And still to come on DD India NewsHour. We'll be speaking with our expert guests on what lies ahead as the Russia-Ukraine conflict enters into its fourth year.
Timeless, boundless, and infinite. The essence of faith. The soul of Sanatan culture. From the sacred confluence of Prayag, where divinity descends to earth. Witness the grandeur, the devotion, the magic. World's largest cultural and spiritual gathering, with over 450 million devotees expected to attend. Mahakumbh, India's greatest festival of faith. Exclusively on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Let's now take you back to one of our top stories where the Russia-Ukraine conflict has completed 3 years, but the quest to bring peace to the region is adding to uncertainties. Joining us to talk about it is Lieutenant General retired Sanjay Kulkarni and former Director General Infantry. Also, we have Ashok Sajjanhar, former senior diplomat. Good evening to you both. If I could come to you, Ambassador Sajjanhar, and ask you about what is going on when 3 years have been completed, but you have all the European leaders and Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, also in Kyiv, but Donald Trump has been silent for most of the day.
Yeah, you're very right, Gautam, and thank you for having me. So I think two data points basically. I think what Vladimir Putin really started with, have a regime change in Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. He's not been able to achieve that. It's been 3 years, he's been fighting, there's been a lot of death, damage, destruction in Ukraine. He's not been able to achieve that. Second data point, right on within the first week, leaders of the United Kingdom, USA, they promised asylum to Zelensky because they thought that Zelensky will not be able to fight on, he will not be able to survive, he'll not be able to continue. That is what the world thought. He still is there and he's continuing the fight. That having been said, I think after a little less than 3 years, we've had the first meeting and the first real signs of, possibility of a ceasefire when we had the meeting of the Russian foreign minister and the Secretary of State of the United States. But of course, it appears very uncertain. You can see on your, what you're showing on your, the images that you're showing on the screens, that there are more than 10 leaders of the European Union who are visiting Ukraine. There is also the Prime Minister of Canada who is there. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he is really cut himself off from NATO or from any sort of support to Ukraine. In fact, he has used very, very uncharitable remarks for the president of Ukraine. So I think it is all up in the air, but it does appear that it is moving slowly, gradually towards some sort of a ceasefire, because there are discussions on, this minerals deal, rare earth minerals deal between Ukraine and the United States. And I think if that, there is agreement on that, maybe the Americans will put their force behind it, try to accommodate some of the concerns of Europe and Ukraine, and also concerns of Russia as far as territory that they have occupied, and also not allowing membership of NATO to Ukraine. And there could be sort of, some area of convergence.
Okay, and there are indications that there is some deal being worked out as well, because that's what Zelensky said in that G7 call that has happened. Ukraine and the US are working productively on an economic deal at the center of an effort to end Russia's war in Ukraine. That's what President Zelensky said. General Kulkarni, before I ask you about what's really happening, just tell us about from the perspective of a former defense officer, a general, how has the notion of warfare changed because of the way this battle has been fought through the 3 years? Because a lot of how wars in future may be fought, God forbid there are any, but it seems more and more inevitable that there might be wars in future as well. And how will they be fought?
Thank you, Gautam. I think at the very outset, nobody ever expected the war to last so long. 3 years plus. It's virtually impossible to have thought of. Everybody thought Ukraine, it would just be a question of cakewalk the way Ukraine was surrounded in the military operations.
And it seemed like that in the initial days.
Initial days. Absolutely. Nobody ever thought about it. But look at what has happened. Because Ukraine has been supported by almost 30 countries. The troops on ground may be Ukrainian, but the equipment, the military equipment was there from the United States and all over. And that is the reason why you found Ukraine could stand up to Russia. But Russia was not fighting Ukraine. Russia was fighting the entire 30 countries' military equipment. And everybody thought the sanctions of Russia would also collapse. That also didn't happen. Russia rather bounced back in a manner that it could withstand and be able to sustain such a long war. That's one thing. So very important is initially, yes, Russians were able to take much more than what they would have probably thought. But subsequently, the way the Ukrainian counter-offensive started, Ukrainians have lost about 20% of their area. And so obviously a large portion of, you can say, the Zaporizhia, Kherson, Kharkiv, the Kyiv that they're surrounded, they had to give it up. And the kind of fighting that was going on and now also continuously, I think the Ukrainian counter-offensive, yes, 20% of the Ukrainian land gone. Crimea, of course, they had lost in 2014. But the way anybody and everybody expected Russia to have a cakewalk, that didn't happen. Russia obviously didn't think that all of the 30 countries would be fighting against Russia. Russia bounced back. Ukrainian counteroffensive stayed on. The losses, of course, both claim to be very limited, but I know hundreds and thousands of people would have died in this war. Number one, over 6 million people from Ukraine have got displaced and they've taken refuge in various countries. So all in all, I think very important for it is, irrespective of what it is, very important. Conventional war, there to stay. Everybody says that, well, maybe a question of a few weeks and few months. No, it can be very long. So conventional war, boots on ground, extremely, extremely important. You can have the works of everything. You could have the finest of air defense. You could have the finest of tanks and the APCs and artillery and everything, aircrafts and helicopters. But at the end of it, boots on ground matter. And that is where I think both the Russians also realize that there is a lot that needs to be done. The Ukrainians obviously lost. And Zelensky became, I thought, like a front for some of the Western leaders, which probably left to Zelensky, he would not have. And again, as somebody would say, many would say, well, the Russians did the invasion. Well, quite a few would say Russians are provoked into it because obviously the expansion and extension of NATO, which the Russians weren't desirous of. And now we see how the Americans also, after January 20th, are insisting on a certain area. Nobody likes enemy in the backyard. That's something which you have to be very concerned about. And obviously, at the end of it, I would say, Gautam, boots on ground matter. Conventional wars are there to stay. Nuclear is only a deterrence, irrespective of whatever one might say, tactical nuclear missile, strategic nuclear missile, nothing of that can be used. They are all as a deterrent, but yes, they need to be there so that at least the thing as a deterrent, you can restrict the damage from going beyond. But, well, the Russians are there, and so are the Ukrainians. I hope, at least after 3 years of fighting, some good sense prevails and talks lead to peace. And very difficult to say that the Russians will vacate the Ukrainian land that they have occupied, because boots on ground, the Russians have the Russian-speaking area in their custody and control.
Thank you for that astute comment on nuclear weapons as well. That is another aspect, and the fact that drones play such a huge role has also been brought to stark relief in this particular war. There are projections that if the war doesn't stop, Ukraine will end up producing in the vicinity of 5 million drones in 2025. Now, let's cut to the present and talk about the future as well. Ambassador Sachin, what do you think will happen? Does everything really hinge? Because the perception is that everything hinges on what Donald Trump does, which is why you have Emmanuel Macron, the first European leader, a month after Donald Trump taking over, going down to the White House, not being received by Trump at the doorstep.
Yeah, you're very right. I think much depends upon Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was really the pivot around which everything was revolving. The whole NATO support to Ukraine, it was revolving around that. But if you permit, Gautam, very quickly, let me also make one or two additional points. Number one, Ukraine was able to take some territory in Kursk region of Russia since August last year. So far, Russia has not been able to get Ukraine to evacuate it. So I think that is very illustrative that although Russia is such a big power, but even in its own territory, it has not been able to protect itself. As far as the Ukrainian troops are concerned, I think weaponry is important, but it is troops which make all the difference. You've seen what happened in Kabul. They had whatever, 70, 80 billion dollars worth of equipment. There were no troops to fight the Taliban in 2021. They fled. And the last is in terms of the nuclear weapons that you said. You see, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in 1994 with the agreement that Russia, US, UK, etc. will ensure its territorial integrity and sovereignty. Today, if Ukraine had nuclear weapons, Russia would never have been able to invade it. Now, coming to, what is going to happen ahead, as we were talking, I think it is confusing. It is difficult to know at this moment, but the United States, Donald Trump is critical to, whatever is going to be the final outcome. And here, I think if it is able to get what it wants, meaning it sent a paper for Zelensky to sign so that, $500 billion worth of rare earth minerals would go to America. Now that, I think, Zelensky must be applauded, that he stood strong, he stood his ground, and he did not sign on that deal. But still, conversation is going on, dialogue is going on. And, this might have been a maximalist position that Trump might have taken. But he moderates his position. There is some agreement between Ukraine and the United States in terms of how American companies will be able to come up and how American companies will be able to exploit and prospect for rare earth minerals. I think then Trump is also, United States is also invested in getting a ceasefire quickly. So I think the first thing we really need to do is ceasefire, and as far as territory is concerned, that will be a matter of negotiation. And Ukraine has also accepted, it has also acceded that some of the territory could stay with Russia, and that could be a matter of negotiation in future. So I think if that is there is also agreement that Ukraine does not join NATO, does not become a member of NATO. But there are security guarantees. There are credible security guarantees for Ukraine. And of course,
but it had credible security guarantees when it gave up nuclear weapons as well. You mentioned it yourself. What happened to that?
I think the conditions today are very different, Gautam. Conditions today are very different. And I think they will have to involve not only these 4 countries who gave, in the Budapest Accord, the guarantees, but also the United Nations. So I think the global community will have to be involved in giving these guarantees, and they'll be not only for Ukraine, but also for Russia.
Provided others are brought in. Apart from right now, Trump is just dealing with Vladimir Putin. You have Macron going there now. There will be Keir Starmer there as well later, perhaps Thursday this week, to convince him to bring Ukraine and Europe on board. So in how much trouble is Europe, apart from Ukraine, in General Kulkarni at this moment?
Thank you, Gautam. I think what Ambassador Sajjana said is absolutely right. The Ukrainians have had a little bit of a success, especially Kirks, which the Russians never expected. From 400 odd square kilometers, of course, they could just recover about 100, 120 odd square kilometers, but they're still hanging around there, and that's a very big thing. But irrespective of whatever it is, I think the very fact that Zelensky seems to have lost his high moral ground, Zelensky seems to have lost the support that he felt very strongly coming from America, because obviously billions of dollars invested by the Americans, and I would say billions of pounds also been put in by the European Union, the euros been put in by the European Union. Irrespective of all that, well, Zelensky doesn't feel very, very comfortable. His desire to join NATO, now that's what the war really started all about. It is only NATO and nothing else. What the Russian stand was that under no circumstances should Ukraine be part of NATO. Why did the war start at all 3 years back? Only for this one simple reason. Well, insistence on joining NATO, well, I don't think ever Ukraine can join NATO. Yet, guarantees 100% will be given that the Russians hereinafter will never ever attack. As regards the ground and the occupation of the land, well, that's something negotiable. It just could become like Germany of the Second World War. You will have East Ukraine, West Ukraine. You may have the East Ukraine with the Russians, the West Ukraine with the Europeans. And so it carries on maybe another 30, 40 years. Amount of losses that the Ukrainians, over $100 billion of losses. By the time they recover, God only knows it will take 15 years, 25 years, 40 years, 50 years for Ukraine to stand on its own feet again. But yet, Ukraine has lost. You lost its space. Ukraine unnecessarily went into war with Russia, which could well have been avoided. The same thing, the start point was not joining the NATO. Again, the insistence by Zelensky that I will step down if Ukraine joins NATO. Now, that kind of a guarantee, as ab initio, I don't think it's possible.
Okay.
Ukraine will never join NATO, and that is where it stands. Guarantees, yes, Russia will never ever attack Ukraine for various guarantees that the Americans or the European Union or the NATO can give to Ukraine. And of course, the reconstruction of Ukraine is very, very important. And I see nothing more than that.
Let's see what comes forth. Meanwhile, Macron has said, as he left the White House to walk back to Blair House, where he's staying, the guest residence, said the welcome from Trump was very good, very friendly, although Trump didn't come to the doorstep to receive him. And again, he said, we had the video conference in the Oval Office with the G7. That's where Zelensky said that talks are going well, where that deal on the minerals is concerned. Now, just a quick comment from you before I close this, Ambassador Sajjanhar. What do you make of what Keir Starmer has been saying? Trump says that Zelensky, Ukraine has no cards, but it's Starmer who's countering him. Starmer and UK and US supposedly joined at the hip, the closest European ally that the US has ever had since the Second World War.
No, absolutely right. I think it is Britain which has been, in the past next only to the United States. You would remember that when Joe Biden was the president, he had traveled to Kiev and he had said that we are going to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. I don't think there could be any other more affirmative commitment than that. Next to that has been Keir Starmer, and now he's been even saying that he would be willing to put in, peace troops in Ukraine. So I think all of these leaders will try to convince Trump, both Macron as well as Keir Starmer, and now we have, a new government in Germany that will be taking over. They will all try to impress upon the United States and Donald Trump that they should stay together, that they should, NATO should not just dissipate like this, and transatlantic partnership should be retained, should be sustained. That is what I think they will try to impress upon Donald Trump. That is what Macron had said before he left, that you have to get peace through strength and not, what has been mentioned, peace by giving up territory or by giving up land. So I think we'll really have to wait and see what is the outcome.
I think we'll find out pretty soon, because we will have Macron and Donald Trump addressing the media as well in some time from now. That's been scheduled. I don't know if it will stay the course, because things do change. Yes, but let's see what happens. Thank you for joining us, General Kulkarni, as well as Ambassador Sajjanhar, for the latest on this situation. 3 years of the conflict and the end not yet in sight. Now, India and the UK are making a fresh push to finalize their long-awaited free trade agreement. The talks between commerce and industry ministers of the two sides have come at a crucial time as global trade dynamics shift, prompting both the nations to explore new opportunities. While the deal is expected to boost key sectors, both sides remain non-committal on a timeline. DD India's Anil Thomas has more.
A fresh push towards finalizing the India-UK trade agreement. UK Business and Trade Secretary Jonathan Reynolds held discussions with Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in New Delhi. The talks, which had hit a pause after 14 rounds, are now back on track. The discussions come as both nations look to overcome hurdles and conclude the much-anticipated trade pact.
Together, we are both happy to announce that we have taken a decision to once again get back to the discussions which were on the table, which because of the elections got stalled, and since there was a change in government in the United Kingdom and a new political leadership, a new team at the helm of affairs, it needed to be once again assessed.
This development is particularly significant amid global trade uncertainties, pushing businesses and nations to explore diverse market opportunities.
It's an excellent place to start from, but both of us want to do more. And that's why I am so pleased to be here today, to kickstart these negotiations, to strengthen our close and vibrant relationship, and unlock new opportunities for businesses and consumers across both the UK and India.
While the free trade agreement is expected to boost key sectors, both sides remain cautious about setting a timeline for its conclusion.
I think I have consistently maintained in all our trade negotiations over the years that trade agreements are for a long-term future. One has to crystal gaze maybe 20, 30, 50 years into the future and make a robust agreement which is a win-win for both sides. And therefore, neither should we rush into things, but it's always good to conclude fast. So we will have speed, but not haste.
Meanwhile, UK Investment Minister Poppy Gustafsson is visiting Mumbai and Bengaluru, advocating for the UK as a prime investment hub for Indian businesses.
The trade talks back on the table is a great momentum for both India and UK as they look forward to sign on the dotted line. With camera person YK Loknath, Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
Building on the momentum, the 16th edition of Elecgrama Electrical Show featured a pivotal keynote address by India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. The minister said that India should become the one-stop shop for electrical goods.
Best quality at the best price from anywhere in the world. Let us showcase in India so that the world's buyers know that for electrical, there's a one-stop shop, Bharat, that is India. Go to India, you will get to see the world over here.
And going back to our story on Prime Minister's visit to the Indian state of Assam, where he witnessed a mega tribal dance event, Prime Minister Modi also visited an exhibition related to Advantage Assam 2.0 in Guwahati. The exhibition showcases the state's industrial development, global trade partnerships, fast-growing industries, and a vibrant MSME sector. On Tuesday, the PM will inaugurate the Advantage Assam 2.0 Investment and Infrastructure Summit 2025. A photo exhibition on the persecution of the minority Hindus in Bangladesh was inaugurated by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. The Hindus in Bangladesh are being targeted ever since the Sheikh Hasina government was toppled last year. The photos were curated by journalist Francois Gautier, and later a panel discussion on the subject was also held at the Vivekanand International Foundation in Delhi. Union Minister Prahlad Joshi has said on Monday that India's renewable energy sector is witnessing remarkable growth, presenting significant investment opportunities.
In last 10 years, there has been substantial growth as far as renewable energy is concerned. It was the total 2.82 gigawatt of the solar energy in 2014. Today it is 100.3 gigawatt solar energy in the country. Wind was 21 gigawatt in 2014, and today it is nearly about 49 gigawatt wind capacity. And the world's biggest rooftop domestic solar initiative, that is PM Surya Muft Bijli Yojana, launched in 2024. Now we have crossed the total installation of 9.5 lakhs installation as on date.
Okay, now one of the most heartwarming aspects of the ongoing Mahakumbh at Prayagraj is the tradition of community kitchens or bhandaras that serve millions of devotees. The scale of these kitchens is extraordinary, ensuring that no pilgrim goes hungry. DD India's Siddharth Bharadwaj reports.
The Mahakumbh 2025 is not just a spiritual gathering. It's a celebration of unity, love and devotion. And at the heart of this massive congregation lies the community kitchens, which serves millions of devotees every day.
Mahakumbh is more than just a spiritual gathering. It is a confluence of faith, culture and devotion. Every 12 years, millions of devotees from across the world converged at the Triveni Sangam, the sacred confluence of River Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati. But beyond the rituals and prayers, there is another profound aspect of this grand event, seva or selfless service. And at the heart of this service lie the community kitchens, ensuring that no pilgrim goes hungry. But this event is not just about spiritual awakening. It is also about compassion and service. With millions arriving each day, feeding such a vast gathering becomes a monumental task. To ensure that no devotee sleeps hungry, hundreds of community kitchens have been set up across the Mahakumbh grounds, run by ashrams, charitable trusts and volunteers. These kitchens serve thousands of meals round the clock, embodying the true spirit of selfless service.
खाना बहुत अच्छा है, जिस हिसाब से इतने सारे लोगों की व्यवस्था बनाना बहुत बड़ी बात है.
Managing such a large congregation is no easy task. Organizers work tirelessly to ensure the distribution of food happens in an orderly manner, maintaining discipline and hygiene while serving lakhs of people every day.
दिन में लाखों लोग सुबह 11 बजे से लेकर 3 बजे तक, शाम का 7 बजे से लेकर 11 बजे तक दोनों टाइम चल रहे हैं. दिन में लाखों श्रद्धालु हैं यहाँ आके अन्न सेवा का भोजन कर रहे हैं.
Mahakumbh is not just a journey of devotion. It is a journey of self-exploration and community bonding. And for many, sharing a meal at these kitchens add to their spiritual experience, reinforcing the belief that serving others is the highest form of worship.
This is the confluence of love, emotion, devotion, where people from all walks of life come here. These community kitchens play a pivotal role to ensure no one sleeps hungry. And their dedication is a living testament of the power of selflessness and compassion.
And that's all we have for this edition of DD India NewsHour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India NewsHour.